Welcome to the Pink Sphere podcast. This is your 30 minutes of pink, your weekly space to pause, breathe, and tune into something that might just change the way you move through the world. And in today's episode, I'm joined by Fiona. She's one of our career coaches at the Pink Sphere, and we'll be covering all about midlife career changes. Hi, Fiona. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Nadine. Thanks for inviting me and welcome everybody who's listening to this podcast.
Thank you. And just jumping into my first question, why do you think women fear making a career change later in life?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Nadine. And I think a lot of women do fear a career change later in life. I think a lot of women um, think about it and want to do it, but almost lack the confidence to be able to move forward. And it could be that they've taken some sort of a career break to look after young children or to care for elderly relatives. They've also maybe focused more on the home and looking after the home rather than working on their career. So they often feel maybe that they're sort of a step behind other people who want to make a career change. I think women would also see young people coming in the workplace being really enthusiastic, want to get on, don't have all the responsibilities that they have, and think, oh, can I do that? Can I compete with that? So I think there definitely is a lack of confidence. I think women also, the mindset is that they will talk themselves out of something rather than talk themselves into something. Now, not every woman is like that, and I am making generalizations, but I think that that can be the case. I also read somewhere that there is a difference between how men and women look at roles, and
Mhm.
that, and again, I'm not being anti men here, but research has proved this, that a man may look at a job description and person specification and think, I can do that, even though they probably only have 60 to 70% of the skills and experience that's required. Whereas a woman might look at it and think, I can't do that. I don't have the skills and I don't have the experience. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing I think is maybe just the logistics of work is that for some women who have got extra responsibilities of childcare, elderly care, looking after the home, they might think, I can't take on that job. It's just too much responsibility, or it involves a lot of travel, and I'm not able to do that. Even though today, of course, there's a lot of hybrid working, but I think there is a reluctance to maybe commit to something that's going to take
Yeah.
up a lot of time and effort and energy.
Mhm. And what do you think is the biggest myth about career shift past, say, 40 and 50? I don't know. What's the biggest myth about that?
Yeah, again, I think that's a really good point that you raise. In the past, I think one of the biggest myths would have been a woman might feel, well, I'm getting too old to make that career change. That there are other, again, young people coming into the workplace. They're bright, they're enthusiastic, they're trendy. They know what they're doing. Golly, I've been in this job for a while. I'll just stick with what I know. And also, who else is going to want to employ me? I think that myth has to be busted, because I think these days women and men as well are working well beyond retirement age. We could all be
There are,
working
yeah.
till 70 plus, and actually somebody who's a little bit more mature in their 40s and 50s can bring a lot to the workplace. They can bring wisdom, they can bring a whole skill set of just having experience of life, and they will probably not want to move around every 1 or 2 years, so might bring some more stability into the workplace as well. So I think that is the biggest myth. Again, I think attitudes have changed, but there has been in the past that women would do sort of more caring, nurturing
Mhm.
roles and don't want to climb up the career ladder, leave that to the men. I think those days are going, even if they're not gone. There are certain
Mhm.
industries and sectors where that probably still is the case to an extent, but I think attitudes are changing over age and over um, women versus men in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah. And with all the experiences they have, all the things that they have learned until their midlife, how can women identify transferable skills that they already have and put them in use?
Again, a really, really valid point. It depends what the woman has been doing up till then. I mean, if let's say they've been working in a part-time role, do, and they've got family duties, you could say a lot of the transferable skills are planning, organising, timekeeping, problem solving, or anticipating problems, preempting things. You know, so they will have a lot of skills just around what they do, even if they've not found them in the workplace. And and also it depends on the woman. I mean, some women will be very well qualified, will have kept up to date with their skills. I think there are other women, and this is maybe where there is a big gap, is would might think, well, I don't have the skills, I can't use that new
Hmm.
technology. I haven't done that. I've never used AI to help me write a letter or something like that.
Hmm.
So I think that the opposite side of that is that women have plenty of transferable skills, but they also may need to recognize there are skills that they could retrain or get themselves on a course, do some online learning to try and upskill.
Yeah, yeah.
Any job these days, you're going to have
Hmm.
some basic IT skills. I mean, most people do because they've got a
Yeah.
smartphone and they've got a laptop or a tablet or a computer. But there are still some, I think, some people who just feel, oh, I can't do that. I've never used
Hmm.
that system.
And some people are just not open to learning.
I think some people just close themselves off and say,
Yeah,
no, I don't want to learn that. But
yeah,
as I was saying before, even for the most basic of job, whether it was, and sorry, I don't mean to demean anybody doing a basic job. I've done plenty of jobs like that, working in retail or working in distribution, you need to have IT skills. You
yeah, you
can't
do.
really get away without having it. So I think that is a huge thing.
Yeah. And from what you said, confidence and having the courage to take the first step is the most important thing to carry on, especially in your midlife, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. And for some women, they may need a bit of support with that. I'm not saying that
Hmm.
every woman should just be able to do that for themselves. And I think this is maybe where we come in the pink sphere, that there are women
Yeah,
who
I was just about to ask you
yes,
that.
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
who
yeah,
understand and who say, okay, if you've never written a CV before or you haven't written a CV for 20 years, then we can help you with that. We can look at what your skills are. We can help you interpret a job application or help you fill in an online application form. That
hmm,
that there's a lot of support and help out there. A woman doesn't have to be just left and say, I've got to do everything on my own.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the pink sphere is there for a woman, and for about any of the stages in her life, from career to business to parenting to midlife, menopause, and everything else that you can think of. What other roles does community play in career transitions?
Um, I think the community can play a huge role because you might find as well a lot of women have done some sort of volunteering roles
Mm-hmm.
within the community. Now, that could be school associated, for example, volunteering within the Parents Association. It could be working in um, with groups of young people, say brownies, guides, a youth club,
Mm-hmm.
a sports club, sports coaching, things like that. So I think if if a woman starts to look at it, they'll probably find that they've done a lot within the community. Um, that again, the skills can transfer to the workplace. I also think the community is important because one of the things I talk about when people are trying to find work is the value of networking. That
Yeah,
yes, you can
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
sit at home online and apply for jobs, but that's actually quite a soul destroying thing to do. But if a woman is at the school gates and chatting to some of the others, saying, "Well, what do you do? Where do you work? Are they looking for people? You know, what skills have you got, or have
Yeah.
you had to learn in that role?" So for me, the community is all about where do you already have a part in the community, and that may
Hmm.
be a volunteering role, and also using that network within the community to help you find out what's out there, what sort of roles are available, what skills do I need in order to do those roles, and starting to gain confidence about getting either back into the workplace or making a change from the role that you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you think, or why do you think society discourages women from changing direction in midlife?
I think to a certain extent you are right, and I think it will depend on probably the culture that the woman has been
Yeah.
brought up in. And some cultures, I think, are more discouraging of women taking a very active role in the workplace because they make we know that the place of the woman is in the home. I think, and I can speak for the UK because that's where I live. In the UK, I think there's a lot more encouragement for women to change careers. I
Hmm.
still think, and if we're looking here at a family unit, that there is an expectation that the woman does most of the sort of the domestic work within the family. So there may be a bit of discouragement. Well, if you go out and get that new job and it requires more travel and more from time away from home, who's going to
Hmm.
look after the children, who's going to take
Yeah.
them to the sports clubs, who's going to do the cooking? I mean, it sounds terrible in 2025 that we're still talking about that, but I think there is still, there is still an element. I also think a lot of women nowadays, maybe at a younger age, but will come up
Hmm.
to the 40, 50, are choosing not to have children, or maybe just only
Yeah.
have one child, and therefore they've probably got more flexibility um, to pursue their career. I
Hmm.
still think there's a body of people who would look at that woman and say, well, she's being selfish, that's not her place in society. What does who does she think she is, sort of thing. So we're living in this world, I
Yeah.
think, where there are different views, there are different attitudes, and it is changing, but it's not changing everywhere, and it would depend on the sort of the community. um, and also think to a certain extent in the past men have seen it as their role to be sort of the breadwinner. I want to go out and support my family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that sounds as if I'm being very old fashioned. I don't mean to be, but I think these attitudes still persist.
It does. It does. And I was just talking to my friend yesterday, to be honest. She just gave birth and her baby is 3 months old. She said, I have to work. I have to support my family. I wish I didn't, but I have to. And her mindset was like she was feeling guilty because she was working, while on the other hand her husband was already working. He had no guilt, no feeling whatsoever, but she was feeling guilty because she had to leave her baby at home. She had to work. As women, we tend to feel guilty for leaving our kids behind, our other responsibilities behind. Why is that?
Again, I think it's conditioning over the years, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
women, in some ways, are their own worst enemies in that.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
should they be the ones who feel guilty about leaving the child at home? If
Yeah.
the child has two active parents, then it's the responsibility of both parents
Yeah.
to look after them. I think in some relationships, men are very flexible and understanding about that. And I also
Hmm.
think these days, a lot of people that I talk to, because since the lockdown there has been much more of an element of flexible working, then both sides of the partnership are taking more responsibility
Hmm.
for the childcare. But I
Yeah.
think I think women still do feel guilty. And I think there is a bit of pressure from sort of groups, whether it's at the school gate, whether it's, a group on the WhatsApp groups or whatever, that you should be the one at home. You should always be there waiting for your child after school at nursery. You should always be there, you know, going to the school concerts, taking interest. And if you don't, you're a bad mother. But you're not a bad mother. You're just trying to make your way in the world. The other thing I think is, I would encourage all women to look at the longer term, not just the short term,
Yeah, that's right.
because the short term is, and again, we're talking about women with children, but it could be, as say, women with other caring responsibilities for elderly parents. I've got to do this. I'm the one who's got the responsibility. But if you think about it, is your children are with you for a short time in your life. Much as we love them, they're not going to be with you forever. Well, some are, because they won't leave home, but most are not, and therefore think about yourself as well. Think about, okay, when my child goes off to university, what am I going to do? Am I going to be left actually, age, I don't know, 50 or whatever, 60? Well, I want to work, but I haven't kept my skills up to date. I don't know what I can do. I haven't got confidence to go out into the workplace. So for me, I would always be encouraging women to say, yes, your children and your domestic responsibilities are really, really, truly important, but also think of yourself as well. What can you be doing in the meantime, even to keep part-time work, to be doing online courses or attending classes to upskill, that don't just put yourself completely to one side because of your other domestic responsibilities, that you need
Yeah.
to do both.
Yeah. It's hard being a woman, isn't it?
It's very
It is.
hard. Yeah, yeah.
Is it?
And also, I got divorced when my child was age 10.
Mm-hmm.
I had to work. And I'm not saying this because I want people to think, oh, she's got a sob story. That was just the
Yeah. No.
reality. And when I look
Yeah.
back at it now, I think, well, I'm glad I did, because I kept my career going. I kept my skills up to date. Yes, it was tough. I, you know, there were other mothers who weren't working, or and must have thought, well, why is she always rushing off to London or doing this or doing that? But it was no bad thing in a way. And I think you're also then setting an example to your children to say,
Of
it's
course. Yeah.
okay to work, it's okay to develop your career, it's okay to make sure your skills are up to date. That's part of life, and that there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And especially if you have to support your kids.
No,
You
it is
know,
difficult, and
it's
I think I don't know about you in Turkey, Nadine, but childcare is extremely expensive, and
here
therefore,
as well.
yeah, and so you have to think, well, if I'm going to work, how can I manage the childcare and pay for the childcare? There is a
Mm-hmm.
certain element of free childcare in this country, but not a lot, and therefore you're having to think, right, if I work, what I earn is going to have to cover the childcare and hopefully more besides. So that could put women off even beginning, starting and saying, well, it's just going to be too expensive for me to go out to work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I just want to go back to the midlife section, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to know what practical steps can someone take when they feel stuck, or how do they handle the financial fears of making a change?
I think have a plan, definitely.
Hmm.
And again, that may involve talking to somebody else. You don't have to do it all yourself. If somebody is going to make a complete career change, and let's say talking about somebody who's got a well-paid job but wants to do
Hmm.
something completely different, like, I don't know, just give an example, somebody who worked in financial services and was very well paid and decided, actually, I want a better work-life balance, I'm going to train to be a yoga instructor or something like that. All of that is fine, but you have to have a plan. You have to think, can I afford to do that? What is my income going to be after I make that change? Um, uh, what will my expenses be? Okay, you may decide, well, you're not spending a lot of time on traveling or clothes for
Hmm.
work or things like that, but you have to think, can I practically afford to do this? And if that person's in a partnership, is the other person supportive? Because there's no point in doing something if the person you live with is not supportive of that. So that definitely have a plan about your finances, and again, think to the future and think it's not just about what I'm earning now, but what about pensions, holiday pay, sick pay, all of those things. But you can talk to somebody about that. There are plenty of people who can give you advice on that. The
Absolutely.
converse may be true. You may be going from a job that isn't particularly well paid, thinking, actually, I want a job that is better paid, but what do I need to do to retrain? How much is that going to cost me? What is the time investment in
Hmm.
that? Um, and can I do that? But these changes aren't necessarily going to happen overnight. And it might be something that you have to think, okay, my plan is within this year, I will have done that qualification. Next year I will have got here, and always have a plan. But don't feel that you have to do it on your own. Talk to
Hmm.
people, talk to people who are already doing it, talk to somebody who's a career coach. If it's about confidence, getting back into the workplace, do I need confidence in how I look, how I dress, how I behave in the workplace? There's a whole raft of things that you need to start thinking about and planning for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was wondering if you could share a success story from one of your clients of someone who, I don't know, successfully pivoted.
From one thing to another. Let me just think. I've got a lot of clients. I mean, probably I could think of examples of where, and I've worked with quite a number of people from the armed forces who've had quite a a woman who's had quite a high powered role within the armed forces, has involved a lot of international
Hmm.
travel, deployments, and things like that. But maybe because of children, and they've got a partner who's also moving around a lot, have decided that they don't want to do that anymore, and have made a real career change, like becoming, going from being a reasonably highly paid person in the armed forces to becoming a lifestyle coach or a personal fitness trainer or something like that. Those are probably the biggest examples that I've seen
Yeah.
of people making a real shift. And that may be because what you talked about community in the
Hmm.
armed forces, people moved around a lot, and a lot of women that I've met have thought, I want to be in one place, I want my children to go to the same school, I want to become part of the community. Then how am I going to do that? So the lifestyle choice has helped them put down roots, settle into the community, become part of the community, and that sort of thing. But so I've seen that as women maybe changing direction quite completely, and do something really different. I've also seen women go the other way, and so I've got a friend who is the founder and CEO of a quite a successful charity now, and she and it was probably not midlife; it was later in life, in her 50s, decided that she was going to retrain, did a master's degree in horticultural therapy, which is about the fact that, being outside, being with nature, being in a garden is
Hmm.
very good for mindfulness, for well-being, and
Yeah.
things like that. And so she did her master's degree, retrained, and set up, and is now running a successful charity. So you
Wow.
you can sort of go both ways. You can go
Yeah.
maybe downsizing your career. Not that
Hmm.
that's a bad thing, but doing something that's completely different, less stressful, more flexible, or actually almost upsizing your career, thinking, I'm going to retrain, and actually I'm going to put all my energy into doing this. Uh,
Hmm.
And that may be because children have grown up, and you've got different responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that help, Nadine, with some examples?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I love them. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing them.
yeah,
And I want to know, what are the signs to know that it's time to walk away from a job, especially when you're in your midlife?
yeah. I think people probably, the signs appear probably before people start to actually acknowledge them. And it's okay to acknowledge them, though. And it could be you sort of lost your joie de vivre about work. You don't wake
Hmm.
up every morning and think, oh, I'm really looking to go to work, looking forward to going to work. You're doing it because it's a matter of routine. And I do it because I need the money. I'm just getting up and doing it every day. I also think in the changing world of work, lots of companies are taken over, merge. There's a difference in management style, a difference in expectation. And if you start to feel this is not for me, I'm not happy here, I'm not in tune with the people that I'm working with anymore, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean to say that it's always you. It just may be it's changed and it's different, and then starting to recognize that and thinking, okay, I'm not happy, or I'm not as
Hmm.
happy as I used to be. Work isn't giving me what I want, or I no longer feel challenged by my work because I feel I can just get up every day and do this job, but I'm not challenged. I want something new, or I want to learn about something new. I'm reading or listening on the news that AI is taking over. Well, what do I know about AI? How can I use that? So I think recognizing maybe that you're not particularly happy where you are, or you're no longer fulfilled, it's becoming
Hmm.
very routine. Maybe the environment you're in is not the same, but also recognizing that you might want a new challenge, you might want new skills. But that's scary to do
It
that.
is.
It's
It
very
is.
scary.
And I believe redefining your career also redefines your identity. What do you think about that? What's your opinion on that?
I totally agree with that. I think if you go out and you socialize, and let's say you're meeting people for the first time, one of the questions that somebody will probably ask you is, what do you do?
Hmm.
It does define you, whether you like it or not. And then people make a judgment about what you do, rightly or wrongly, would make a judgment about what you do. Um, I've also spoken to people who have recently retired and said, I don't like this because I go out and people ask me what I do. And I say, well, I'm retired. I haven't got anything to define me anymore. So a
Hmm.
question
That's
maybe
true.
was, how do you want to be defined? Are you comfortable being defined the way you are? Or do you want to be defined as something different? And whether we like it or not, people are judgmental.
Yeah,
We would all make a
that was
judgment.
a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I know I do. You don't mean to, but you probably do.
That's right. That's right. Wow. And if you were to just tell every woman in midlife one thing about career change, what would that be?
Uh, Take the first step. So the first step might just be recognizing that you're not fulfilled or you're not happy, or the first step might be just going to talking to somebody else about what it is they do, or talking to somebody who can give you support, like getting some coaching. But
Hmm.
just make the first step, because what I think in life, and you probably experience this as well, Nadine, and other people have,
Hmm.
is if you want to make a change, it can seem huge, so you don't do anything because you think
Yeah.
this is too big. I just can't do it. So I'm not even going to think about it. Whereas if you take the first step, you say, right, by the end of next week, um, I will have talked to um, that person that I know who is working in a role that sounds really interesting. I'd like to find out, what skills do they have? How did they get there? Arrange to have a coffee with them or something like that. That is a
Hmm.
step. And then
It
once you've
is.
taken the first step, you can take another step and another step. But don't beat yourself up because you haven't taken 100 steps. You've only taken one
That's so
step.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. Well, thank you, Fiona. Thank you for your amazing answers to my questions. And that's a wrap for today's 30 Minutes of Pink. And if this episode spoke to you, hit subscribe, share your questions for Fiona or for me in the comments, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye
Thank,
bye.
thank you.